by the time I got to the bottom, my vision had become so pinholed, I had to look down just to see where I was stepping. My heart had swollen up to the point that it tore the muscle around it. Essentially, it was like having a heart attack, they said.
What is up, everybody? And welcome back to the Schooling Struggle Podcast. It is our belief that the only guarantee in life is that we are all going to struggle. And how we choose to embrace our struggles is what empowers us to become the best versions of ourselves. How is it going? My name is Pete, coming to you from snowy and rainy and icy and windy and warm Heartland, Vermont. And with me is another Heartland resident, Mr. Brian Fortier. Welcome to the show, Brian. It's always a pleasure to see you. They can't see us, the listeners, but we can see each other, which is really nice. How's it going?
Great, Pete. Thanks for having me back. And I just want to take a quick minute before we get into it because these go so quick. Just to thank the listeners. Boy, the people, whether you reach out or not, it's been really a fascinating experience doing this. I didn't expect that when I started doing it, but it's certainly been a nice benefit. Excuse me, for doing this.
When you say you didn't expect that, what is that you're referring to?
People reaching out to me and sharing with me and how they're enjoying it and what it's helped them with in their own. I mean, I guess that's what the hope is, at least for me, as I look at why I'm doing this, is if I can help one person, then it's all worth it.
Yeah, it's so cool. I think I love the saying, the most noble deed is to serve others. And in a way, this is our way of doing that. And I really do appreciate you and I text throughout the week in preparation for the shows. And for those that don't know, Brian puts an immense amount of sweat equity into prepping for these shows. And it's really cool. So I'm super grateful for all the time that you put into this show. Obviously, this is an unpaid endeavor for both of us. This is our chance to give. And I, too, am super grateful for our family of listeners that's out there that's getting into our stuff. So thank you so very much.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
So I have a goal for tonight's show. And I'm going to take a step back and share with the listeners that I am in the midst of this really intense, really involved course that I'm taking. It's an online course, and it's out of England, of all places. And it's to get my life coaching certification. I have these personal fitness certifications and these nutrition certifications and obviously my teacher certifications. And I thought it'd be really cool to just pull it all together and at some point in the near or far future, become a life coach for, I don't know, maybe one or two people that really want to make some progress in their life. The definition of a life coach is someone who takes someone who's functional and helps them to thrive. If you are non-functional, that's when you go see a doctor or a therapist or a counselor. Not saying that functional people don't use those resources. They do, which is awesome. But I don't specialize in that. Someone who just feels that they have things that they want to accomplish in their life and they'd reach out to a life coach. Kind of the categories why someone might reach out to a life coach is for health-related stuff, relationship stuff with friends, family, or significant others, or career stuff, financial stuff, mindset stuff, personal growth. People set goals for fun and recreation or for, their physical environment. So I'm just really psyched about all the stuff that I'm learning in regard to this. And in the online theory section of my class, I just completed a section on goal setting. So I texted Brian. I was like, I want to do an episode on goals, setting goals, and how we've used goals in our lives. And he's like, oh man, this is my bread and butter. He's like, I'm fired up about this. So yeah, I'm super psyched to get into this conversation with you about goals tonight, Brian. Anything you'd like to say or share to set the table for our conversation as we move into this topic on setting goals or goal setting?
Goals have always been a part of my life. Without a goal, you can't score. So you got to have a goal, whether it be a basketball hoop or a soccer hoop or just a target you're shooting for in life. And yeah, we can get more into that now, but setting a goal, people always ask me what's my New Year's resolution going to be? And I tell them, I said, I don't set resolutions. I set goals, because in the word resolution, it's resolute. It's not flexible. It's definite. And I've seen too many people make resolutions and then 2 to 4, 6 weeks later, they slip up and maybe I'll do it. Maybe next year I'll be able to do it. It's like, rather than having to be a goal, where maybe I didn't achieve it today, but what could I do different to make sure I get back to it tomorrow? And like the sign hanging behind you, better than yesterday. That's why I don't do resolutions, because I hate that word resolute.
Mm,
I hope that listeners can relate with that. But yeah, goal is a very specific thing to get you, to the ends of a mean. And then for me, with a goal is having one set beyond that. Because if you just set the goal, get what you want, well, what do you want after that? What's going to get you up and motivate you to focus tomorrow? And I think that's what you're talking about, taking someone who wants to thrive, you said? Is that the
yeah.
word? Yeah. Because that's, getting to that stage of thriving is the hard part.
Yeah.
But setting the goal can be the easy part. We use this word so much, and I hear it so much with your podcast, but it's habits. It's creating the habits to change the things you're doing daily to get that outcome. It's not getting the goal; it's who you become while you're achieving that goal.
Mm. Yeah, I say this all the time, both on this podcast and in my classroom and just in conversations with people. But, I believe as humans, oftentimes our greatest strength is our greatest weakness. And I think that that is certainly the case for me when it comes to goal setting. And if I kind of comb through my personal history and think about ways that I've utilized goals in my life, and oftentimes to a detriment, because the goal ends up being the idol when the experience or the journey, so to speak, really should be the revered, in my opinion, that the revered experience. And an example of that would be 2008, when I rode my bicycle from San Diego to Boston, so coast to coast. Like, for me, that ride was not about enjoying the experience. It wasn't about seeing landscapes. It wasn't about meeting people. It was like, can I ride my bicycle from the Pacific to the Atlantic? And it didn't really matter what it took or if any aspect of that was enjoyable. It was just, I want to do the thing. Oftentimes for me, I get so goal driven that it might not even serve me, but I just want to accomplish the goal. I think that that's an interesting thing. And why I share this is I'm getting a little off the rails recently about breaking big tasks down into small tasks. And this all started when last year during the entire school year, but toward the end, I was just finding myself so frustrated with being tired at the end of the night and having to empty the dishwasher, refill it, and then make my lunch. And that was like, to do the whole thing would be like 45 minutes. And I was just like, at the end of the day, I just had no energy. So then I would just do mindless things on the computer and keep pushing it off and pushing it off. And then I'd get more tired. And I'd start that process later. I'd be even more frustrated. So this year I decided to get up a little bit earlier and empty the dishwasher the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning. So when I get home now, a third of that job is already done, and it's easier for me to stay motivated to do the dishes at night. So then I start them earlier. So then I'm not frustrated, angry, and then I get to bed earlier, and then I feel fresh. And I was like, oh, all right, I did it with the dishes. Where else in my life can I break up these things that I don't like to do into smaller tasks? So it's really not that big of a deal. So now I have a rule that anytime I go into my closet, I have to bring something and put it in the hamper. Because what happens to me is I just like take my dirty clothes and kind of throw them in a pile next to the bed. And they just build up all week. And by the end of the week, I have this giant pile of clothes. And I don't feel like dealing with it. And then I push that off and push that off. And now it's just like every time I go to the closet, which is where the hamper is, to get a new shirt or whatever that I'm putting on for the school day, just I got to bring something, put it in the hamper. And like when the weekend comes, I don't have this giant pile of clothes anymore. And I'm like, holy cow. There's lots of examples right now in my life with this, with fitness, with school, with parenting, all these different things. But it's like I'm becoming a little obsessive about, oh, this thing's big. Yeah, how can I break this down to the smallest steps right now and attack it? And right now, that's kind of where goals are revealing themselves in my life. And just going to be interesting to kind of think about that and dig into it tonight.
Yeah, and the reverse of that can be true too. I've found is if my tasks are too menial and not motivating me or focusing me, I tend to compile a few of those tasks together that will do them more at once or closer in time. And in doing that, that's a good way of managing your time, because now leaves you a little more time in other areas that you didn't know. But it's setting those goals, and they're, like I said, constantly adjusting them. That's why I was interested when you said you broke down your tasks from it, because a lot of people, when they think goals, they just think the one word. They don't realize all that moves around it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have a format for, I think, how we can carry on with the conversation, and I'm going to pick this up, and then you just chime in when you feel is a relevant time. So don't be afraid to interrupt me or just get into it. But I wanted to lead off with the definition of a goal for us and for this conversation tonight. And my course defines a goal as a target or outcome that one is using to provide a desired change in their life. And I think you could probably find many definitions of goals, but I like that one, target or outcome that someone uses to achieve or provide a desired change in their life. And then as I kind of go down the list here of things that I want to talk about tonight, there's different types of goals. And depending on what research you do and who you talk to, you can break goals down into all different types. For me in my life, my first umbrella or breaking of down goals is to outcome-based and process-based. And an outcome-based is, I want to do this thing at this time, sometime down the road. So the outcome base is, I want to be able to run a mile without stopping, or I want to one day run a marathon, or I want to consume 2,000 calories or less in a given day. So at the end of the event, either you did it or you didn't. You either ran a mile without stopping or you didn't. You either completed a marathon or you didn't. You either got through that day eating more than 2,000 calories or less. So that's an outcome-based goal. You hit it. Usually has a number attached to it, so that way that number can help define or clarify whether you hit that goal or not. And then we have our process-based goals, and process-based goals are just, you commit to doing the thing because doing the thing over and over and over for a long period of time is going to make change. So I'm going to commit to walking 10 minutes a day. I'm going to commit to brushing my teeth. I'm going to commit to striving not to lose my mind when my daughter has a public tantrum. And these are kind of the process based. If I know that I can get stronger if I lift weights every day. So my goal isn't to bench press 225. My goal is to strength train 3 times a week. And wherever that leads me, that's great. But I don't have a specific strength goal, but I do have a process-based goal where I'm going to commit to working out 3 days a week. And wherever that leads me, it leads me. So those are kind of the 2 big ways that I break down goals. And then from there, I can break them down further.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I used the term goals versus the systems. Like you said, going to the gym or brushing your teeth was an example I saw or thought of. You go to the dentist and like, geez, you have this, and that. And are you brushing your teeth every day? Oh, yeah, but you may not be. And you can come home and be like, okay, I got to start brushing my teeth every day. But you know what? First thing I need a toothbrush. I need toothpaste. Make it be that basic to break a goal down to the things you need to achieve it. And then, because you can't even start it if you don't have the necessary tools. Like you talked about, I'm going to do strength training every day. How do you have access to that equipment? That opens you're going to have to join a gym. The goal comes back to even before that. Where can I go to access, the tools or things I'm going to need to achieve that?
The MVP, minimal viable product, right? Or minimal viable progress. What's the first thing that I can do in order to move forward with that goal?
And oftentimes, if the goal isn't big enough, those hurdles are big enough to stop someone from trying to achieve it, unfortunately.
Or big enough to prevent them from even starting.
Yeah, that was my point, yeah.
Yeah, that's daunting.
Just a part of goal setting that, that's why I said there's so much that surround the actual goal itself. Right. But once it's all set up and you have that system going and you're going 3 days a week, you're brushing your teeth every day, and then, hey, I'm gonna add in a little cardiovascular workout to this as well. Hey, I'm gonna add flossing into my oral regimen now. But that's the ever growing,
starting small and building.
Yeah. Well, when we first asked me about this, you said small goals versus big goals. And I'm like, I always think of them as short-term and long-term. But then when I really got into it and broke it down, it was pretty fascinating to process it.
So as I was doing my class and I'm reading about the different information they're sharing with me about goals, they also broke goals down into 3 other categories. So growth goals, what they refer to as giving up goals, I might name it something differently, and deficit goals. So growth goals, in this type of goal, you wish to gain or attain something positive to fulfill your aim. So that could be like, I want to run a set distance at some point, or I want to save this amount of money, or I want to work towards something and then I achieve the thing, and then you reevaluate and you move from there. What they refer to as giving up goals, in this type of goal, people want to give up a bad habit. So they want to stop doing something that they're doing, giving up smoking, or giving up, constantly checking your email or your phone or internet, or spending less time on social media, giving up things. I might call that a reduction goal rather than a giving up goal, but I guess it's just semantics, the words you use.
Yep.
And then they also talk about the deficit goals. And this type of goal, you had something taken away from you and you wish to address that deficit. So maybe you had a health issue and your functionality or your mobility or something was taken away from you and you want to work that back. Or maybe a relationship in your life has ended and you want to move forward with yourself after having suffered that setback. I think that was an interesting way. I hadn't really looked into goals that way, but the growth goal, the reduction goal, the giving up goal, and then the deficit goal. And that was kind of new information for me. I think in a way I use all of those on a regular basis, but they still fall under the umbrella for me of, is it an outcome goal? Am I trying to achieve a thing, or is it a process goal? Like, I just want to stay the course and continue to strive to get better.
Yeah, I mean, everything you've talked about is, and I think with a goal is you can think about it. But my big thing has always been to write it down, writing down my goals. That we hadn't really touched on that yet.
So I'm going to touch on that a little bit, and that's
okay.
What I would call the value of using structured methods of goal setting.
Yep.
Like the strategies that we can use, and there's so many of them. And I'm excited to pick your brain about ways that you've used strategies and specific goals, in your life, and I can share those examples as well.
I mean, yeah, goals go so far back for me. It's and now when I realize how I'd hate to use the term simple, but simple they are to set. Achieving them is not always easy, but setting the goals, to me, the process of it, making sure it's a specific goal like we talked about before, and then okay, is it even realistic? Is this even something I can achieve? And like you said, it could be something physically that maybe I've lost with age or a health issue I've had. Can I even achieve it if it involves that? I dehydrated years ago running a road race. I'd been sick. I didn't know it. About a half mile from the end, and like, boy, I don't feel right. And I looked down. There's the finish line. I'm like, that's right there. It's a half mile away. And I was racing. You don't quit. And I'm an athlete, so I'm like, I'll just get there. By the time I got to the bottom, my vision had become so pinholed, I had to look down just to see where I was stepping because I dehydrated to the point that I ended up in the hospital for 3 days. Essentially, it was like having a heart attack, they said. Because I'd been sick, it was classified as a viral myocarditis, where my heart had swollen up to the point that it tore the muscle around it. In your blood, it's called troponin, and it's only in that muscle around your heart. So that's why a person who came out of in the ER, a guy I played football with, he goes, Brian, it looks like you've had a heart attack. I was like, what? But I got 3 days up at the ICU in Hitchcock, a couple ambulance rides in there. And this had happened when I was prior to substitute teaching and during. And I don't know if anybody even knew that. So I had struggles and challenges during that time. My goal, you said, for overcoming it with that was by the following year, I wanted to hike to the top of Mount Ascutney. And for those listeners who don't know, there's not really an easy trail that's not steep up Ascutney or down. Man, I was swatch to swatch. I'd have to stop and take a break sometimes. It's the piece of paint on a tree that keeps you on the trail. I could hardly go 30 feet and I'd have to stop. My heart was just ripping. I did make it. It was not easy, but.
So that's a great example of when I led off talking about our greatest strength is our greatest weakness. The goal for you is to finish the run.
Yeah.
But it didn't serve you because it set you back so much with the ailment you induced on yourself by overriding that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the process-based goal would be, well, I'm going to stay hydrated. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means I'm going to continue to, drink water and eat foods with water in them. And and you're showing me your water bottle right now. So that's that process-based goal. My run-in with dehydration was when I went to Morocco. I got really sick while I was over there. And in Morocco, they don't serve water. It's just tea. So all I really drank the whole week was tea. And I got back, and a day after I got back, I was mini golfing with my family, and I felt truly like somebody kicked me in the privates and punched me in the side and punched me in the stomach all at the same time. It was the worst pain I'd ever endured my entire life, and I didn't know what happened. So I had my wife drive me to the ER. I went in there, and I was like, I don't know if this is an appendix thing. I don't know what it is. This is so bad. And no matter what position I got in, just this pain in my privates into my stomach was just unbearable. And I was diagnosed with a kidney stone. And kidney stones happen kind of over time. So it might have been in there before, but that completely expedited the whole thing. And I talked to women that have both passed kidney stones and given birth. And they're like, oh man, kidney stone was way worse than giving birth. That mine was 9 days. It was like 9 days of excruciating. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. It was so bad. So one of my process-based goals is, all right, Pete, like the only non-clear pee that you're going to have of the day is your first one. Like after you slept for 8 hours, that one's yellow. The rest of them have to be clear, because I don't want to do that kidney stone thing again. I got a second one a couple months ago, but it was much smaller, and I passed it on my own without having to go to the urologist. Yeah, so that's an example of like you and I both want to stay hydrated. There isn't this like massive goal with a date like 2 years from now that we're trying to achieve with our hydration. It's process based. Just every day we want to try to stay hydrated, mitigate against that really long word that you had with your heart and with my kidney stones. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but being stuck on the goal is not always great either. Like it's okay to pivot if there's like a reason to do that where it's going to serve you in a better way than just achieving the goal.
Yep. Yeah, I mean that event changed my life. That's what really made it so I had to stop working at that restaurant, and I had to cut back a lot of things in my life to rebuild back up. And my doctor said, because you'll never be the way you were, and I took it so for granted. I could just throw on my pack, go hike a mountain, never even think twice about it.
Yeah.
And now to think about that, I did run one more 5K after that, just to make sure, to show I could do it. But I've gotten just doing more walking over the years. That's when you've seen me out in town at times, because I did, it's just too much on my heart.
Reevaluating, pivoting.
Yeah.
Huh.
And
yeah, that's interesting.
My older brother who runs marathons, but you mentioned goals before like that with running, and it can be anything people want, whether they're going to have a side business, or it just doesn't have to be something physical. And we talk about that a lot because it's a big part of our lives. But you could be having a side business, or learning a foreign language could be something.
It's just big to like whatever that thing is, just to be able to break it down into small pieces, and I think that's so important. Speaking of important, my course says the importance of goals. Goals are hugely important because when you set goals, it helps to provide purpose and direction and focus. And I think that's where like the number piece comes in for me, right? It's easy to say, well, I want to get stronger, or well, I want to eat better, or well, I want to drink more water. But if I say, well, I'm going to strength train 3 days a week, I'm going to drink 64 ounces of water during my school day, or whatever these things are, that helps give a purpose, a direction, and a focus. And I think so many people, at least that are in my orbit, that come to me and asking for help are like, yeah, I want to walk more. I'm like, well, what does that mean? Does that mean you want to walk more than you walked yesterday? Does that mean that you want to walk more than your best friend? Does that mean you want to walk more than the average time you've been walking? Like, what does walk more mean? And then we kind of dig down. We're like, oh, okay. So what you mean is you want to try to make time to walk 20 minutes a day, 5 days a week. Now we have a goal. Now we have a purpose. Now we have a measurable outcome that we can track or do something with. And that's the importance of goals. And what those goals do is they help determine the effectiveness of your progress. Is the thing happening? That self-reflection, that self-evaluation, that progress is super important for really having a grasp on that progress that you're making.
One of the things I always caution people with also is, you mentioned it before, who do you want to walk more? How do you want to walk further than normal? Do you want to walk more than a friend or whatever? I've always made sure that when I set my goals, that I'm competing against me. I'm competing against Brian of yesterday and today. And because I've seen people do this in their life to use another person as their gauge. But the problem is, if that person is changing every day, and the last time you saw them was 2 weeks ago, when you see them again, they're not the same person from 2 weeks before. They've shifted. They've changed their goals. They've made the moves to become who they need to be. And my point is, you can't do it by imitation. It has to be, you have to go through the process, unfortunately. I remember.
Yeah, I like that. I like that too. Sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, years ago, was talking with someone is really interesting, and I see it with you and Todd and I. Is we're three very similar people, but we approach it from three very different angles. And in this case, this person and I had come to a point in our life, we're not the same age, but we'd come to the same conclusion at the same point in life, but we took two totally different paths to get there. And then we were talking about our mutual friend, and I said, I don't think they're ever going to get here to this conclusion. Like, why not? I said, because they're trying to imitate the things they see you or I doing, and they're not going through and learning the lessons. And that person to this day has never reached that, because people try to imitate rather than go through the lessons and the changing and the growth they need to. And for me, we talked about being happy. You wouldn't believe the fun I've had, even with that time in the hospital. And I look back, I'm like, my God, I could have died. But the joking around and the fun I had there, because I had a goal already set while I was sitting there climbing a Scotney within a year. I was already setting things for myself and I didn't realize how serious it was. But it's, people just got to go through that growth, like you talk about with this training you're being involved with. Is people have to want to do it as well. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink.
Yeah, and I think there's a big difference between thinking you want it and then like really wanting it. There's research that shows like just the idea of a lifestyle change really kind of, gets those feel good hormones flowing and you're feeling, really happy and you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to start running. And just the idea of, yeah, well, I'm going to run 4 days a week. And then you go out and you buy the shoes and you buy the running clothes, and everything's great. And you go to do your first run, that feels okay. And then the next day you're a little bit sore, and then you get a little bit of a cold, and then it's a little windy outside, and it's easy to make an excuse. And you can really, really believe your own excuses. Like, oh man, getting up at 4:30 in the morning, working out. Like I could believe any excuse I want to make for myself about why I didn't have to get up at 4:30 to do a workout. And it's like where the rubber meets the road is like when it's not easy, and then you still have to, put one foot in front of the other with that goal, and that's where it gets tricky. And I'm just a huge fan of RPP, relentless persistence and patience. Like that is the big one for me. Like, how can you be relentless? You just stay with it. And then being persistent, and then just be patient. Like it's not going to change overnight. And pivoting is okay if things aren't going the way you were hoping when you set that goal, or that goal is not serving you, or the path you're on to take that goal or to make that goal happen, doesn't line up the way you thought. Like it's okay to pivot. It's not giving up. It's not quitting. It's pivoting. But continuing to be relentlessly persistent, I think is super important when it comes to this type of stuff. What you just said about like, you can't control other people too. Like for years I was competing in this CrossFit Open, and at the height of it, there was over 400,000 people in this worldwide online competition. I'd be like, all right, I got to get in the top 5%. I got to get in the top 5%. And Jen would be like, you can't put your self-worth on your finish in that competition because you can't control what anybody else is doing. So your self-worth needs to be, am I doing this relentlessly persistent every day? And whatever the outcome is, wherever my place in the leaderboard is, it is. And I have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
And that, that mindset has changed for me. It's not about getting in the top 5%. It's like, what can I do today? And if I stack those over and over and over again for a long period of time, when I get to the competition, my results will speak for themselves, whether it's in the top 5% or not. But it's not putting my self-worth in that number. It's being relentlessly persistent about my process each day. And wherever that lands me, that lands me.
Yep. The effort. Yeah. I think see, I guess I haven't had that problem in a long time. And it's getting older, but I've never set a goal where, like you said, I'm going to be in the top 5%. My thing was like, I want to get out there. I want to average a 7-minute mile. If I can do that, great. Where that puts me, I don't care.
That goal had nothing to do with anybody else, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it didn't. Yeah. I didn't care where I placed. I was having fun with it. This road race, one of the road races I used to do was a 5K for an Oktoberfest. I ran it one year and didn't even train and still did my normal time. And my buddy goes, oh, that's it. I want to run this, get in shape to run this race. He said, but when I do it, because he's Irish, he goes, I'm not going to run it in lederhosen. I'm going to run it in a kilt. And I said, you get in your shape to run this thing in a kilt. I said, I'll run it in a kilt with you. And it took him a couple of years to get himself into shape because he wasn't in the best of shape at that time. And so there I was 2 years later at the German beer festival, this half French, half Polish
starting line,
wearing an Irish kilt. That doesn't sum up my life, But I wasn't doing it for anybody else.
Yeah,
for support of him and and what he achieved, because that was a big goal for him. And now over the years, whenever we hike, we stuff together. We always do it in a kilt. Just
I think your example of that 7-minute mile is really a good example for what people refer to as the acronym SMART goals. I've heard some people that are like all in and they think the SMART, SMART model is really the best way to go about goal setting and achievement. And some people are like, that's overrated. It's not that great. But I think a conversation about goals without at least mentioning or addressing the SMART goal system could be a little bit of a miss. So I want to just include real quick the SMART goals. S being specific, M being measurable, A being agreed upon, R being realistic, and T being time phased, right? So if we take that 7-minute mile goal of yours, it's specific. It's a well-defined goal, and there's a post for achievement there. Either you did the 7-minute mile or you didn't. It's very cut and dry, right? It's measurable. You know it's quantifiable. There's no ambiguity, and you can work toward that. You're making progress toward that. You know, you run a 10-minute mile and then a 9:50 and then a 9:45, and you can measure your progress getting up to that. It's not some like ambiguous thing that's happening and maybe you'll get it today, maybe you won't. You're working toward that. Then the A is the agreed upon, right? You agree to commit to this thing and you're going to commit to it and you're going to stay with it. So that's you agree with yourself what your goal is and what your plan is to get there. And then is it realistic? Like, Brian, I love you to death, but I don't think you could ever run a 4-minute mile, right? So you set a goal that was realistic for yourself, a 7-minute mile. That's really an important part of the process. It's one of the most challenging things about being a high school teacher. Kids are like just starting to weight lift. They're like, oh yeah, I want to be able to bench 225 by next week. I'm like, bro, you can't bench 25 right now. So the goal needs to be realistic. How about 25 as your first goal? Then we'll build on that. And then the last one is time phased. And this provides a client or the person that you're working with a target date and time for an achievement. And for me, that's a big one, is having, and this again, for these outcome goals, I'm going to do this by this day. And that's what kind of keeps me motivated. And that's almost one of the reasons why I love competition so much, is I know this thing's going to happen on this day. So whether I want to train today or not, I kind of need to train today because that day is coming. And so those SMART goals, I think, are helpful. Specific, measurable, agreed upon, realistic, and time phased.
yeah, I've as typical before this one. I spoke with my boys about this one, and where you shared the SMART goal because I did a training course, adult training course when my boys were in scouting. You take it as a course, and after you pass the course and how you do, if they like the way you do things or whatever, they ask you to be on the staff next time. And this is only a course they do every 4 years, I believe it is. I was asked to be on staff after taking the course, and it was one thing to go through the course, but then to teach it was something else.
Best way to learn something is to teach it.
And then the youth program side of that, Jake had taken and was asked to be on staff, and they do theirs every 2 years. He eventually ran that whole program, picked his staff and everything for the entire state of Vermont. I think he was 17 or 18 when he finished it off with that. But he was very heavily in that. So the fact you brought up SMART goals, when my boys listened to this one, because Andy was involved with that as well, it's something we know and talk about quite routinely. And but to listeners, this may be all new, and because you don't hear it, you're not taught this in school.
Speaking of the listeners, if this is your first episode with us or with Brian, when he refers to his boys, he's referring to his 2 sons, Andy and Jake, that are in their 20s right now.
Yes, yeah, and I have 2 girls as well, Emily and Gracie, who are 19 and 26. So, yeah.
When I refer to my boys, it's talking about my high school friends.
Oh, I see. So. Huh. I'm too old to be boys like that. But it's and it's having those goals and setting them, and not stressing out about them. Like you said, having it. So it was 7-minute mile. It didn't start there. I was already running an 8-minute and was starting to beat an 8-minute mile. And I'm like, I wonder if I can average a 7-minute mile. And it's hard around here because it's kind of hilly at spots too.
Right. When you were talking about the Boy Scout thing, how did that relate to the SMART goals? So that was a training.
That's where
you can just keep it a minute or less. So you don't have to go too deep into it. But it was a training about SMART goal specifically,
W-
about using
Well,
that
it's using
model to achieve things?
yep, to teach people how to set goals and then attain them. Because I think the biggest struggle people have is the specific part. Because I think we overcomplicate them in the beginning, and if you do that, the rest of the information, the rest of those, the acronym is hard to follow because it has to be something. It can't be based on someone else and else's thing. It has to be you and timely and something that can be done. And if it isn't done, you can reset it. It doesn't have to. Like I said, it's not resolute.
Yeah.
But that's where I learned it, and I'd already been setting goals. I just never had it broken down like that for me. And once
Uh,
I did, I'm like, oh, this is easy. I can do this.
those scouts, I feel like they're always prepared.
Yeah, it's a motto. uh,
Man, the time goes by so fast. As we start to round out our conversation here about goals, I thought a good place to finish would be the value of using structured methods of goal setting, right? So if we're using tried and true structured methods on goal setting, we establish, or we can use a goal time frame that helps us move along and helps provide a basis that kind of clarifies our priorities. As long as you're using something that works for you, that's appropriate, has a sequential order, like I said, is really trackable for me is a big thing. Right now, I'm having all of my students track their sleep. They write down what time they went to bed, what time they got up, and then how many hours of sleep they got that night. So we can start to track and see how we're each getting sleep, because the research is showing that one of the best things we can do to get not only enough sleep, but high quality sleep, getting into those deep zones of REM and deep sleep, is to have a regular bedtime. And those who go to bed at or around the same time every night get higher quality sleep and more recovery from their sleep than people who have erratic bedtimes. So it's just, one small thing I'm doing with my students right now is they're all tracking their sleep, which is really cool. And I think that tracking is huge. And then when it comes to maintaining the process, I think in addition to that tracking, I think sharing your progress with someone who cares, I think is really, really important. So when I do my life coaching or when I do my schooling, whatever, it's always find, some people call it an accountability partner, however, whatever word, whatever vernacular you want to use, but someone that you can share your small wins with, and every day. So if my goal is to walk 5 minutes a day, I know that Brian's going to be in my corner, so I'm going to text him every day that I walk. And on days that I don't walk, he's going to check in with me. And I think that is super, super helpful. Curious to know from your end, what are some real tactical strategies that you have used in your life, Brian, that have helped you with your goal setting and or your goal achievement process?
well, I usually try to keep it within 5 categories for myself. And then the ones I have written every day in my planner. That's why I'm looking off to my left. Because like I say, I forget what a habit setting goals and these things are for me. And it didn't start overnight, and it wasn't easy. But I always have personal goals set. Being on the podcast, other things we've talked about before, but professional and financial ones. With work and where I'm investing my money and how much money I want to make this year. Because in my particular career, I can make more or less based on that. So there are goals within there. With who are the top 10 people I'm working with that are interested in buying a car these days. And keeping that right in front of me, because that will impact that professional and financial part. And then the physical and the mental part, the exercising, what I listen to, what I read, there's all influence how you are and who you are every day. And when you can mesh all of those together, and have them aimed in one direction for your life, it's just fascinating what can be done. I don't know why I've just took to doing these things in my life, but I have. It's just been something I've been doing for so long I can't even recall learning some of the steps, because to me they are just habits, and that's not touting anything or whatever. It's it's who you are. That's what having a goal will do. It's not so much the goal you're setting, but like I said, touched on before, it's who you're going to become through that process of changing to be the person
Yeah.
to achieve those things you want.
Yeah. That old saying, are your habits of today in line with your goals for tomorrow? Like
Yep.
who do you want to be tomorrow? All right. What do you have to do today to move yourself closer to that?
Yeah.
And I always love the saying, we often overestimate what we can accomplish in a day, but underestimate what we can accomplish in a year,
Yeah.
right? We just stack those small wins over and over and over again, and it makes for immense positive change.
Yep. Yeah, it's it reminded me of something I was looking at again today along those same lines. It's like we sometimes set these huge, lofty goals that we can never achieve in a year, but then we look at the 10-year goal and that could be way bigger. Because we stack up those smaller 1-year goals, whether it be 1 week or 1 month in a decade, how much where you're going to be even further ahead than what you could have thought you were going to be.
Yeah, I talk about that all the time, right? Like if I decide to walk 30 minutes a day, if I do that today and I never do it again, it's probably not going to have a huge impact on my life.
Yeah,
But if for the next 30 years, every single day, I walk 30 minutes versus never walking a minute,
yeah,
what that transformation over time, what that would do is so immense. It's the same thing like saving $1 a day, right?
yeah. It's
You take
exponential.
yeah, save $1 a day and then invest that at whatever 5%. Where that gets you in 30 years versus having spent that dollar every day, it's immense. So those small wins just stack on top of each other. It's really amazing.
Yeah, it's that penny doubling thing. If you double a penny every day for 30 days,
You have a lot of money.
we offer someone what I think it's like $10,000 a day, or do you want a penny a day doubled? And when you do
Yeah,
the math, it ends up being like millions of dollars.
millions of
a penny.
dollars. Yeah, yeah, and our goals can be like that. I'd rather have my health and wellness than $1 million at age 65, 70, and that process starts now. The best day to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best day to plant a tree is today.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Well, back to real quick, you mentioned like the areas of my life where I set the goals and the five I mentioned. And I read this in a book. But if you use those five spokes as your goals in your life, and I say spokes now because put them in like as a spoke in a wagon wheel coming out from the hub, and you rate yourself 1 to 5, 1 to 10, whatever you want.
The wheel of life.
Yeah, and if you've heard of this, yeah,
Yeah.
that it's pretty hard to make that wheel be totally round because we're all weaker in certain areas.
Certain area. That's actually in this course. In the
Okay,
course
well,
that
there
I'm
you
taking
go.
is a wheel of life. Yeah, they recommend doing that with when you meet with people for the life coaching. Maybe we could down the road at some point do a full episode on the wheel of life. That might be pretty cool.
Yeah, that's so. It's
Yeah.
like
But yeah, what Brian's saying is you have these 5 areas of your life and you rate yourself on where you're at and out of 10. So I might be saving all my money. So I'm at a 10 with my finances, but I'm at a 1 with my entertainment and my fun because I'm not spending any money doing anything. I'm just sitting at work all day making money. And because I'm sitting at work all day making money and my money's at a 10, my health is at a 2 because I'm sedentary and sitting in front of my computer all day. And then my marriage is suffering. So it's
I
like
was just gonna
you
say,
try to make things a little more even. If everything was a 5 or a 6, you'd be a little more well-rounded and you might feel better about your life rather than having a 10 in one area and 1s everywhere else.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I touched on with the personal things before. How's it going to affect your family was what I was going to mention in there, but you touched on it as well. Yeah, because you can have
Super cool.
all the money in the world, but they talk about, but then when you're at the end of your life, people will end up spending all that money just to save their health to live longer. It's like, so there you go.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
you had all this money,
That's
but you
true.
spent it all on your health in the end, as you just invested that time differently. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, we could talk about this goals thing for hours and hours, but I just want to touch upon, some of the main points that my percolating in my brain and want to get your thoughts on that. So good stuff.
yeah, I wasn't kidding
I
when I
wish I
told
was there to watch you run in a kilt.
you. I don't know if you want to see it. Well, the best part, Pete, was I went back on the website where I bought that kilt from, and it said we have the Scout kilt, and I'm like, what? There's a Scout kilt? So I went in. Sure enough, the Boy Scouts of America have a certain tartan from Lord Baden-Powell, who started scouting in England. So I ended up ordering a second kilt. My buddy goes, "You can't have more kilts than me," so he has 3 now. But for those who may have seen or not seen of listeners, every 4th of July, we have our parade here in town. And part of the tradition was the Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts would walk in the parade. And for a few years of it, I would walk in the parade with my kilt and my scout shirt on, throwing candy out of that little,
That's awesome.
the little candy. I call it a merce as a joke. The score in, the little bag you wear. I had candy in there to throw to the kids. But it was just all for fun, and it was fun to see the people my age in town laughing about it. Like, oh
Yeah.
God, Brian.
I've known you long enough Brian Fortier, to know that one of your goals is to make people laugh. It's great to be in your orbit, and I'm super grateful that you make time to be on the show with me.
Well, thanks. Appreciate it. This was. I was looking forward to this episode. And looking forward to being on again.
It's good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, to our family listeners, we so very much appreciate your ears. We thank you for your time. We are incredibly grateful for your attention. You can find us on School and Struggle Podcast on Instagram. On behalf of Brian Fortier, I am Pete Driscoll. We are the School and Struggle Podcast. We are out.
Later.